I'm Preeti, Assistant Professor from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. So our next topic is risk management. So there are a lot of topics that we need to focus on. So I have segregated this video into two parts. Now let us see what we discuss in part 1. But before I start off with what is risk management, so what exactly do we understand by the term risk? So risk is nothing but the probability of occurrence for uncertain events and their potential loss within an organization. So I repeat, whatever flaws or some kind of disturbances that happen wherever we are executing a process or any project that is in process, some kind of uncertainty that happens is considered to be called as risks. So this risk will lead to loss in an organization. So if we want to talk about examples of what are the risks or what exactly risk means, you can measure or you can talk about them in terms of its robustness. Like let us consider a process. So if we say risk factors, so we focus on the risk, the robustness, the performance, the efficiency, the scalability. All these factors are nothing but considered as the risk factors. Right. So we have some few general things that can be discussed as types of risks in a software development process. So let us have a look at the first one, that is the code issues. So when I'm trying to say code issues, so this term is related to one kind of risk. Right? So code issues meaning whenever you are trying to code something or there are some flaws when you are trying to write the code or it is not trying to give us an apt result. That is trying to not build a proper code with proper models. So all that also leads to risk. So at the initial stages itself, we will be able to understand that there is some problem in the code while the developer is trying to write the code. So that time he can assess that there will be some risks pertaining to the development of the code. So initially he needs to take measures at the initial step. Else later he has to face the consequences, like a lot of loss or time could be wasted. All these things happen. So the first type would be risks can be happening via the code issues. Next, we have aggressive deadlines. Right. All of us know whenever a project is initiated or a project is ready to be started or resumed, we have some deadlines that have been given by our project managers or team leaders, etc. Anybody of that kind. So what happens when you have some aggressive deadlines already quoted for you? What happens is the employee tries to finish off the things very fast, not caring about some minor things. So that also can lead to the risk. Next, unmet expectations. This again needs to, while you are trying to execute something, you come across some uncertain sequences or uncertain things which you are not aware of priorly. So there are some kind of unmet expectations. You did not predict them early. So that could also result a risk in the software development. Next, we have low productivity. Right? Now, low productivity meaning there is no, the cost that is required is not quoted for that particular project or a product. So that leads to low productivity. That again is considered to be another factor of the risk management. Right? And the budget issues are also risk related to software development. Budget issues is nothing but we don't have proper resources or tools to execute if the risks are found or trying to execute different things in different manners. So budget is also a major factor resulting risk in a software development process. Next, poor risk management, right? So generally whenever we have said in all the previous videos that we have seen various software models, their planning, their execution, we have seen that there should be a proper management. That is like from the top down approach. The initial top level people have to quote a proper template for executing a plan, and then moving the same thing to the other lower level people, right? If the management is good and if the plannings are properly coded, then it is like the process goes on fine. But if you have a poor management, then that also leads to risks when you are trying to execute your project. Next, inadequate project management is nothing but you don't have enough people who are well versed with the content or who are good at the content, and once the problem arises they will be able to solve it. So if you don't have proper project management, that is, there are no proper people who should exist in a system, if they are not there, that also leads to a risk in the software development, right? Next, scope creep. Now, what do you mean by a scope? So whenever you are trying to execute a project or whenever you are trying to execute a module, we have a scope saying that these are the things I have to follow and these are my requirements and I have to execute this, meaning I have to reach my target. I will specify some objectives and you should understand whether are we reaching them or it is suitable to the scope that is defined initially, right? Initially, the quoted scope is different and you are trying to do some other scope. That is, if the process of execution is changing, that also leads to a risk. So it is termed as scope creep, meaning you are not sticking to one scope. You are trying to move or deviate from the topic you are trying to focus on. That is nothing but the scope creep. Next one, stakeholder issues, right? So in previous videos, we have discussed a lot about who are the stakeholders, what are their responsibilities, right? Stakeholder can be any kind of customers, government, people involved in businesses or any kind of management tasks. All these people are considered to be stakeholders, right? If the stakeholder is trying to mention some issues, let it be regarding the code or the planning process within an organization, any issues, if the stakeholder is trying to bring them, then that also leads to a risk. That is, it will not match the process which is going on, and in between, if the stakeholder is bringing out some issue stating that the process is not according to my scope, then it leads to risks again. Next, how users respond, right? So we will be trying to start off our plan and you don't know how the users or the customers will respond to our output. So that kind of disturbances is also called as risk. As I told you, it can be how efficient your output is. Are we getting optimal solutions? All this leads to how users will respond, because our end of the day, it is like the customer has to be happy with whatever you are trying to do. If they are not responding to whatever we are trying to do, it again leads to a risk, right? And the second last one is the team members leaving. Meaning, initially you started off with some 20 people who are well versed in developing the code and each one is put in different area of work. But in between, if they are trying to move away from the team, then that also leads to a risk, because the people whom you have set in the project, you have set them according to the works they know and works they are good at. So if by chance, if that person is trying to leave, then again that leads to risk in the software development. And the final thing are the external issues. External issues, as the name suggests, it's something which is from outside. It can be a natural disaster or some kind of external issues from any other organization within that enters into our organization. All these factors are called external issues. So this is again an important factor which is considered as the risk for a software development. So this is a brief introduction about what is a risk and what are the types of risk we can see. So I repeat, risk is nothing but the probability of occurrence. The probability of occurrence for uncertainty events, meaning whenever you are trying to execute a process, there are some uncertain things that happen. That is, you have thought something, but when you are trying to execute that, you are not getting the exact results. So some uncertainty that is happening during the process execution, that is called a risk. And this risk leads to the loss in an organization. So let us start off with our discussion or the agenda of today's video, right? So here, as I told you, we are breaking up the risk management into two categories, that is part 1 and part 2, right? In part 1, that is we will going to discuss about the reactive versus proactive risk strategies. Right? I think by now everybody is aware of the term what is risk in a software development. So let us see in depth the technical terms that are related to software risk. So initially we will be focusing upon reactive versus proactive strategies of risk. And second, we will be focusing upon software risks. And then third, we will be focusing upon the risk identification. Within risk identification, we have two segregations again. The first one is the assessing the overall project risk. And the second segregation is risk components and drivers. So this is the main agenda of today's discussion. So I repeat, we have understood what is risk and what are the different types of risk. Now we will see what is reactive risk and what is proactive risk and what are the strategies, meaning these two terms are the strategies, reactive strategy and proactive strategy. Then software risks. Then how are you trying to identify the risks? Once you have identified the risk, what is the overall assessment that you give? And what are the various components that are involved in identifying a risk? So these are the main topics of today's discussion. So let us move on. Yeah. Before we start off with the agenda that I have told you, let us first focus on some 6 questionnaires that talk about risk management. The first one is, what is it? Meaning, what is risk management? Initially, I have given you a brief discussion about what does the term risk mean. So here, risk management, what exactly it is. So have a look at the first point, which states, risk analysis and management are actions that help the software team to understand and manage uncertainty. So to understand the term risk management, there is something called analysis that you need to do. So the risk analysis and the management, these are some actions that are performed by the software team who will be able to understand the uncertainty and manage the uncertainty. Right? So I repeat, risk management is nothing but you are trying to analyze, and these analyzations, whatever has been obtained, those actions will help the software team to manage the uncertainty. That is to try to focus on what is the uncertainty that has been caused in a software process. Right? Next, the next point, if you can see, it might or might not happen. So what does it say? Whenever we say risk management, it is not that every process that a person is trying to execute, risk might occur or might not occur. If your quotations, your templates, the plan of yours, the actions to be performed by different people in the team, if everything is planned properly, you don't come across risk. That is why it is being stated as it might or might not happen. A risk might or might not happen. Right. Moving to the next point, we don't focus on the outcome. That is, regardless of the outcome, initially you are supposed to identify it, access the probability of its occurrence, and then try to generate a plan. Right? So what is the third point trying to say? You don't have to focus about the outcome or the output. So initially, to be on a safer side, you initially have to identify, check out the probability of the uncertainty and try to give a possible plan to it so that you can try to execute the things. Okay? Right. Moving to who does it, or who are the people involved in doing this risk management or management of risk. Who are the people involved? So you can see each and every person, whoever is involved in the software process, is involved in the risk management. So generally we talk about the managers, the software engineers on a broader scale. So I repeat, who are the people who are involved in it or who is doing this risk management? We can state that every person, whoever is involved in the software process, is responsible for the risk management. So initially, they are the managers and the software engineers. And you also have the stakeholders who are trying to participate in the analysis. right? Stakeholders are considered as a end product users or the customers, you can say. They are trying to participate in the risk analysis and the management. So these are the people who do it or who are involved in the risk management, right? So why is it important? Why do you say the risk management is important? So you can look at the quote or a motto given by the Boy Scott. He says that be prepared, software is difficult understanding. What does this mean? Each and every person, whoever is involved in the development phase in a project, should be ready or should be prepared to experience any kind of consequences. That is, you don't understand the software, right? Meaning, suppose I ask the students to write some program for particular code. Each student writes code in his own way. So some students can get the output, some students cannot get the output. And sometimes the code might be right. You cannot assess why the output is not coming. So software is like that. Coding is like that. So you have to be prepared. So it is a motto stated by Boy Scott. He says, be prepared. Whatever can happen, software is difficult to understand or it's a difficult undertaking. Okay. Most of the things can go wrong, but always it will not happen. He states most of the things can go wrong. Always it will not happen. And you have to be prepared, as I told you. And the key, you have a key element of a good software project. What is the key element? It is that you are supposed to understand the risks and try to manage them. Understand the risks and managing them is a good key factor in a good software project. So this is why it is stating that it is important. Next, what are the steps? What are the steps involved in a risk management? That is, how do you start off first? What are the things followed one after the other? So initially, our first step is risk identification. That is, what can go wrong? You have to assess in the first go itself. Next, what you have to do is you have to analyze them and what are the chances of getting the things? That is, how you determine the likelihood. That is, you have to analyze them. Next, you are supposed to check out their probability and arrange them in their rank wise. And finally, you will set a plan to develop and manage all these factors. So I repeat, the first step is you are supposed to identify the risks. Once you have identified them, you are supposed to analyze the risks, right? Once the analyzation is done, you have to keep them in the order of their occurrences, or you can see the probability. More is it is on the top cadre. And the final one is you have to prepare a plan to check out or to solve how these risks have to be monitored. Yeah. And what is the work product? So what is the solution, you can say, in the other words? What is the work product for this risk management? It is nothing but the RMMM plan. It means first M stands for mitigation, second M stands for monitoring, third M stands for management. So you are supposed to have a plan which will talk about, or in the other terms, you can say a work product for the risk management. It is nothing but it is an information sheet. It is a set of information sheets that are being produced. Meaning you have an information sheet that wherein you can note down the things that happens in a proper order. As I have told you, you are trying to identify the risk. You are analyzing, then keeping them in a order of their occurrences, and then trying to plan. So this details are actually put into this sheet. So that is actually called RMM plan, where you are talking about the risk mitigation, monitoring, and the management. Okay, and all these things we have talked about. What is risk management? What are the steps? Who are the people involved in it? What are you trying to do? Now, how do I ensure that whatever I am doing is right? Or in the other terms, you can just have a look at it. How do I ensure that I have done it right? So what do you mean? It is nothing but you have to have a proper, thorough understanding or trying to monitor them every now and then. That is, you can assess the improvements, trying to reduce the risks. So what is it trying to say? Your risks should be analyzed and managed, and they have to thoroughly, they are actually derived from a thorough study of the people, product, process, and project. So from out of all these things, wherever you are trying to face risk, you are supposed to analyze and manage them. So it is like you are checking upon whatever you are doing is right or not. That is, whatever. If I want to write an essay, for example, I have written in brief. I have written a gist on a page, or point wise I have jotted down some 15 points. What do? I again go back and check my first point, so whether I can write a proper paragraph on it. Then I go to the second, I recheck it. I go to the third, so on. So you are trying to have a thorough study that is derived from various people, process, project. Okay, and every time you should check that the RMMM is revisited. That is, mitigation, monitoring, and management is revisited. Are you repeating the things again and again, so that you can ensure that the risks are kept up to date and they can be solved as early as possible. Okay, and the last one, possible plans. If you say that there are some possible plans for risk management, you should be able to relate that or term them to be realistic. Meaning, in the end product it is trying to show you, you should term it to be realistic and try to execute and solve those things. Yeah. Now, coming to the first main agenda, that is reactive versus proactive risk strategies. Firstly, we should understand what is reactive. Reactive, as you can see here, it is trying to monitor the project for likely risks. That is, the term itself, see, it is saying that you are trying to monitor the project for likely risks, right? So this reactive strategy is trying to monitor the project for likely risks, meaning this type of process is an ongoing process. It is not planned before or it is not planned after. Whenever a project has started, you are just trying to monitor. Okay? And keeping resources aside, that is, resources are set aside to deal with these kinds and till they become the actual problems. Okay? So I repeat, reactive is nothing but you are just trying to monitor when the process is actually started and that the project is being monitored to know what types of risks are existing. And generally, any software team cannot do anything about the risks until they are proving the code wrong, or until something goes wrong. Any member in a software team cannot do anything. Okay, if he comes to know that there is a risk, he tries to work out in a rapid manner. That method is called as firefighting mode. Okay, and if this process also is trying to fail, we hand over the things to crisis management. Crisis management is trying to take over and do the things after it. So I repeat, reactive. So I'm just trying to focus on what reactive is. Reactive strategy is trying to monitor the likely risks that happen in a project. And second point that you need to remember is any software person involved or in a team or in an ongoing process cannot do anything until something goes wrong. If he is able to make out that something has gone wrong or the risks have occurred, he will try to take a rapid action. Trying to take that rapid action is called the firefighting mode, right? And if that phase is also trying to fail, then we hand over the things to crisis management. So moving to what proactive means. This is acting as an intelligent strategy. So that is why it is termed as proactive. Okay. When does this start? Why is it called as proactive or why is it called as an intelligent strategy? Is just because it begins before the technical work is initiated. This is a very, very important point to know about what proactive is. It is nothing but before the technical work, that is before the coding part or before the people have started the exact process, right? Before that only they try to start off this strategy. So what does it do? It is trying to focus on identifying the things and then trying to know the probability and then ranking them by their importance. Once this is done, you are trying to establish a plan, right? And the main objective in this particular strategy is to avoid risks, right? And all risks cannot be avoided. The team works to develop a possible plan. So I repeat, what is this proactive strategy trying to talk about? It is called as an intelligent strategy. That is why it is named as proactive. Meaning, why is it called as proactive? It begins before the actual work is initiated, or in the other terms, you can say actual technical work is initiated. This process starts. They try to identify the things, try to rank according to the occurrences, you can say, and then establish a plan. Establish a plan and then try to control them as it is told. Okay. Now, the next one is software risks, right? The next topic is software risks. To understand the software risk, as I told you, risk in simple terms is nothing but some kind of uncertainties that exist during a process is termed as a risk. As the risks go high, the cost also keeps on increasing and the quality of the product is reduced. So to understand what exactly is software risk, these are the two main factors, that is uncertainty and loss. So what do you mean by uncertainty? In the definition we were trying to say, right, some uncertainty that is happening in the process is called a risk. Now what is uncertainty? It says that a risk may or may not happen. Okay. It is also saying that there are no 100% probable risks. Uncertainty meaning it may or may not happen, right? There is no chances. You cannot predict that, yes, it will happen. That's called uncertainty. Next, you have loss. Loss is nothing but if the risks has been captured and they are leading to reality or they are becoming reality, meaning I am executing my code. Out of 10 outputs, 9 have been executed and 10 is my final output where I'm trying to show my result. If that is not coming into the reality, then everything goes into loss. So losses will occur if risk becomes a reality. Okay. Then when risks are analyzed, it is important to quantify the level of uncertainty. Yeah. It is like vice versa. Uncertainty meaning you cannot predict. Loss meaning if the risk is becoming reality, then you will face losses. Okay. And now what is he saying? When risks are analyzed, it is important to quantify the level of uncertainties. If you are knowing what exactly is a risk or what is it talking about, then you can also say that, okay, up to 10% this can be executed, or 20% there are no chances for us to execute. So all those things can be as a software developer can tell whether this can execute or it cannot execute. So how can he tell this? Only when he understands the uncertainty and loss, then only he can talk about what exactly a risk is. Is it existing, or if it exists, what are the other things that we can do? So these act as the two main characteristics. Okay, right. Now what types of risks you likely encounter as a software is built? Right? So what is he talking about? Whenever you are trying to build a software, what type of risks do we come across? So let us state few. First one are the project risks. What do you mean by project risk? There is a threat to the project plan. When you say project risk, there is a threat to the project plan. So what does this mean? If the project becomes real, it is likely that the project schedule will slip and the costs will increase. Meaning what? The term itself is saying project risk, meaning there is a threat to your project plan. That is, whenever the project risks are becoming real, as I told you, when the risks are coming into the reality, as I told you, I have 10 modules and out of 10 modules, 9 modules are have been executed, and the 10th one is my final module and which is very important for my project. If there is a problem occurring, then the entire application will collapse, leading to the loss. So it states that whenever you are saying that the risks are becoming real, obviously the costs will increase. The risk, trying to monitor the risk, the cost will increase and your quality of your application will go down, which leads to the entire project management. It creates a trouble to the entire project management. And moving to the third point, if you can see, project risks will identify few things. One is the budget, as I told you. Next is the schedule, that is trying to say that it has to be finished in this time slot, time period. And people involved in it, staffing, it can be organizations or anything. And then resources, stakeholders, the problem requirements, all these people are involved. If you say project risk, all these people come into the existence, right? Moving to the second category of what types of risks exist when you are building a software, it is the technical risks. First one was the project risk, and here it is a technical risk. Technical risk meaning there is a threat to the quality and the timelines. This is very, very important. Quality and the timelines of the software and when it is being produced. So whenever you say technical risk, there is some coding problem or you are not able to execute them in a proper amount of time. All these things are called as technical risks, right? And if you look at the second point, if a technical risk again becomes a reality, implementation may become difficult, right? Whenever this technical risk, that is, if the quality is only going down, there are obviously that project is also not working properly. It means that. Okay. The third one, technical risks identify the design, meaning you can come across these technical risks whenever you are designing or in the implementation phase or in the interface. That is, whenever the user is trying to interact with the system. So it can happen during the interfaces or whenever you are trying to verify, you are trying to test the things, test different modules. There also, these risks can occur. And maintenance problems. Maintenance problems can be anything. It can be some battery failure or no proper memory storages. All these lead to the risk. Okay. And technical risks occur because the problem is very harder to solve because resources are not available. As simple you can say, they become harder because the resources are not properly available. That is why we come across the technical risks. Moving to business risks. Okay. What is this business risk talking about? The threat is for the capability of the software. When you say business, meaning you are trying to sell your application to some XYZ company or some XYZ person or something. So where is the threat at? The threat is in capability of the building the software. So this is very, very important. This risk is very, very important because it is trying to focus on a broader sense. That is broader area. So there are some 5 main people or candidates for top 5 business risks. Who are they? First one is the market risks. So what does this say? Building an excellent product or system can that no one really wants. That is, if the market is suppose you have some see, every now and then I want let me give you an example. I want to buy a mobile phone. Right. I look at the things which is ongoing, which is in trendy, right? I will try to buy that. And if it is working well, it will retain in the market for a long period of time. But if it is not working and if the customers are not buying, it does not exist. So you are trying to build an excellent product, but it is not, people are not trying to buy it. So that is called market risk. If your existence is nowhere, then there is a risk, and that risk is called a market risk. So you have to go with the trend, what the people are liking more. So our applications should be relating to that. Right. Now, nobody is using Nokia phones because smartphones are there with so many different features in it. Right. It's like that. The second risk that is termed as business risk is the strategy risk. Strategic risk. What is the strategy risk? Building a product that no longer fits into the overall business strategy for a company, right? Suppose you are working as a client or you are working for a company. The works that you know are not fitting into the company that you are working in. There is no longer use for that company to give you work, or it is like the strategic risk. if the product that you are building is no longer fitting into the business strategy for any company, then it is of no use. Next is the sales risk. Trying to building a product that the sales force does not understand how to sell, right? Everything is ready, but you don't know how to advertise it, or you don't know where to start off, right? How will I get the hype? All these things, if you are not knowing, we fall under the category of sales risk. Next, we have management risk, right? What is this management risk? Losing the support of senior management due to the focus or change in people. As we have just discussed, if the people very frequently are leaving the team, then again there is a lot of risk that can be occurring, because the people who are left are kept for some work, and that work becomes pending or incomplete, and the other team member is not knowing how to do it. Then that is actually called management risk, you can say. The support of the senior management is also not there because people keep on changing now and then. And the next one is the budget risk, as we can say, personal commitment. Right. And there is another general categorization of the risks. They are known risks. What do you mean by known risks? They are known risks, meaning it is like the delivery date, documented requirements, scope of a project, poor development environment. Known risk meaning the things that you are actually knowing, right? They are again one categorization of risk. When you say predictable risks, what are predictable risks? They are drawn from the past experiences. Predictable risks are drawn from the past experiences, where it's like staff turnover, poor communication with the customers, dilution of the staff effort on ongoing the maintenance. So predictable risk meaning we know. Suppose when I have given a task to 5 students in a class and I know how each student works. Out of these 5, if one is not coming regularly or the third one is not able to focus because his works are related to the one who's irregular, it becomes complete mess, right? That could be predictable risks. That is, you are trying to draw it from your past experiences. Next, unpredictable risks is like joker in the deck. What does this mean? They can and do occur, but they are extremely difficult to identify in advance, meaning you don't know what will happen. I have written a code. I am trying to compile it or interpret it. I'm getting my output, but there are situations when you are trying to build an application, you are in a state whether you don't know what exactly it happens. Priorly, you cannot estimate, or it is difficult to identify the things in advance. They are termed as unpredictable risks. Right. Now moving to some principles of risks management. There are few principles that have been stated by SCI. SCI stands for Software Engineering Institute. They have given us some 7 principles, out of which the first one is maintain a global perspective. What is it trying to say? You need to view the software risks within a system in which the component and the business problems that is intended to be solved. That is, maintain a global perspective. Here, this principle states that how do you manage the risk? It is that you should know much about the software risk, or you should be able to view it in the context of the complete system. That may include various components, and are you able to solve it? The main intention to solve the things. Next one, take a forward look view. Take a forward-looking view, meaning think of a step ahead. It means that. So think about the risks that may arise in future, right? Try to think that, okay, if this happens, what are the things that I have to do? Plan out, have a contingency plans, establish a contingency plan. That is, try to have possible plans. Okay, try to have some possible plans. Next one is encourage open communication. That is, encourage open communication is nothing but try to talk to various stakeholders every now and then, what outputs they want. Try to take their suggestions so that you can improvise on trying to avoid the risks. Next, we have integrate. Integrate is nothing but you are trying to consider risk risk must be integrated into a software process. That is a different way of trying to have a focus from the initiation to the end process. And the next one is emphasize a continuous process. That is trying to focus on a continuous evaluation or trying to evaluate in a continuous manner. That is attentive. Try to be attentive throughout the software process. If required, try to add new ones. Next one is develop a shared product vision. Develop a shared product vision. Meaning, if all stakeholders share the same vision, better risk identification is involved. So what is it saying? Develop a shared product vision. Meaning, the vision is common to all the people who are there in a project. If you are trying to share the same vision, then identifying the risks becomes more easy. Okay. Encourage teamwork. Don't try to work independently. You are supposed to know the talents of each and every people. Try to assign them the right task in which they are good at. Try all of them to pull up together or combine them together and make them work. Right. So that ends the principles of risk management. Now the next topic or the last topic of the today's discussion is the risk identification. How do you identify the risks, or what exactly is risk identification? You can say it is a systematic attempt to specify threats to a plan. So risk identification, meaning you are trying to identify some risk, meaning it is a systematic attempt. That is, you have to plan the things properly to know the threats. How can you do it? You can do it by estimating something, trying to schedule them, allocate resources if needed, or load the resources, etc. That is, you can properly identify them and try to resolve them, you can say. So what do you do once you have identified it? So by identifying the known and predictable risks, what will do? The first project manager will take the first step toward avoiding wherever it is not needed, or trying to avoid them or control them. So I repeat, risk identification is a systematic attempt to identify threats. Now, how can you do that? You need to have a proper schedule, proper resource loading, all these things. And once it is known, project manager's first step is to avoid them in the proper plan that has been stated. Right. Now, there are some two types of risks, you can say, that is related to the identification. One is the generic and the other one is product specific. When you say generic, these are nothing but the potential threats to every software project. Meaning in every project, you will have some potential threats. That is generic risks. When you say product specific risks, they are nothing but they are identified only those with a clear understanding of the technology. Meaning the problem is only with the particular technology or with particular people or the environment wherever so-and-so is working, all these things. So I repeat, generic is nothing but potential threats in every project, and product specific risks is nothing but it is pertaining to some understanding of the technology or some people or environment. Okay, to identify this product risks, that is, which is pertaining to only some basic understanding of technology and people, what does it do? The project plan and the software statement of the scope are examined and answered. Okay, so I repeat, generic risks are nothing but threats in general for any project. But when you say product specific, it is pertaining to understand something in specific. That is, it can be understanding people, understanding the technology, or any understanding the environment you are trying to work on. They are called product specific. So to identify this product specific, you are supposed to know the scope. Okay, and answer the following question which is developed. What is it that you have to be answerable to? It is, what special characters of this product may threaten our project plan? So who is creating disturbances will be answered if you clearly have an idea about the technology, the people involved, the environment that you are working with. Right. And the first method for identifying risks is to create a checklist, items in the checklist. Meaning you are having a checklist in that you are stating different items. Okay, and there are few subsets which talk about the generic subcategories. Okay, I repeat, one method is to create a checklist, and this checklist is used to identify the risks and focus on some subsets. Now, what are those categorizations? How do you categorize to know about all these risks? So initially you are maintaining a checklist for the risks, and they have some subcategories. What are the subcategories? The first one is the product size. What is this product size? It is talking about, in our previous discussion, we have talked about how do you talk about the length of the code, right? The size of a code. All these things is linked up to product size. So they try to talk about the overall size of the software to be built or modified. Next is your business impact. Business impact is nothing but the risks associated with constraints that are imposed by the management. So I repeat, initially, whenever you want to identify the risk, you should have a checklist. So whenever you are focusing on the checklist, we have some subcategories. So the focus points of the subcategories are the product size, business impacts, right? How is the business impacting? Next, stakeholder characteristics. What are the various stakeholder characteristics to be listed out in the risk identification list? That is, first one is define what the process is trying to talk about. That is process definition, meaning risks which are associated with the degree to which the software process has been defined in an organization. In simple terms, you are trying to talk about how much risks will be there in the process definition. Next, you have development environment. So while you are developing, what is the availability of the risks and what is the quality of the tools that you are trying to take? So this is very, very important. Whenever you are saying developing environment, what is the quality of the tools that you are taking up? If you are taking up some tools which is trying to give you only 80% accuracy, then it is of no use. So it is like you have to check upon the quality of the tools as well to better identify the risks. Okay. Next one is technology to be built. So as the time passes, you are supposed to focus on the technology and try to get the new things updated. Next is the staff size and the experience. That is the people involved in it, how much experience they have. So basing upon more experience, the less times it takes to resolve the risks. Right. Next, when you talk about the risk identification, there are two main segregations. The first one is assessing overall project risk. Assessing the overall project risks. So what is it trying to talk about? It is trying to talk, or the questions are ordered by relative importance of the success of the project. So whenever you say assessing overall project risk, you have some points to be stated. They are, first one is, have top software and customer managers formally committed to support for the project. If you want to assess the complete project risk, first you should tell that whether the software and the customers involved, are they giving us a complete support? Next, are the end users enthusiastically committed to the project? Meaning, are they giving us updates in what manner they want to give the result? First one is how the people are involved with their support. Next one is how the end user support is there during the process. And next one is, are the requirements fully understood by the customer, software engineering people and its customers? And lastly, have customers are completely involved in it or not? So, assessing overall project risk is broadly categorized into who are the people involved, how are they supporting the system, are end user requirements constantly monitored, are we getting a constant support from the customers, and the requirements, are they completely stated? These four major topics are involved or discussed in this overall assessment of the project, right? And then you have some questionnaires that are to be answered. That is, the first one, if you can see, have top software and customer managers formally committed to support the project. As I told you, are these people supporting the project? Next, are the end users enthusiastically involving? Next, are the requirements understood properly by the customers? Next, are the customers involved in trying to define whatever requirements have been stated? Next, do end users realistic expectations? Do end users have realistic expectations, meaning whatever they are trying to quote, is it matching to the reality, or just like that they are trying to state that I have to get these outputs. You have to even know that, because some results are not predictable but are asked by the end user. So the team should know whether it is a real expectation or a flaw expectation. And you should also see that project scope is stable. That is, you should not change your project scope. Whatever has been stated at the end of the execution, project scope has to remain the same, right? And next, does the software engineer team have the right mix of skills? Meaning, people having different skills are involved in the team or not, has to be checked. And are the project requirements stable? That is, whatever you have stated initially, by the time you come to the end, it should be stable, right? And you also have to focus on, does the project team have experience with the technology to be implemented? Do they have proper experiences to be executed? And is the number of people on the project team adequate to do a job? Meaning, for a project, if there are only 5 people required, you don't have to take 10. You need 100 people, but you are taking 10. That also has to be checked upon. And all the time, you have to know about the customer and user consequences, trying to understand the importances and inputs given by them to build up a proper software, right? And the second segregation under the risk identification are the risk components and the drivers. So when you say components and the drivers, these are the 4 features that have to be focused on. That is the performance risk, how accurate it is giving you the result. Okay, cost risk is pertaining to the project budget, whether it is maintained properly or not. Support risk, are you getting a proper support? It can be either from the resultant software or from the people involved in the project. And schedule risk, that is, whatever you have properly scheduled, are you going according to it? That is, you are trying to monitor the degree of the uncertainty during the schedule time. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.